I've spent a fair amount of time discussing book bans on this channel, and in the news, we have another case of a book that is being banned in a school district. And I'm going to talk about that article. I'm going to give you my thoughts on whether or not the book should be banned, but ultimately, I want to leave it to you as the audience to weigh in on this because not everybody agrees. We have seen situations like, for example, the Hunger Games, where schools are looking to ban the Hunger Games, or maybe parents are just angry that their children are being exposed to the Hunger Games, and a lot of us are like, "Hey, Hunger Games, it's a modern classic. I mean, what are we talking about here? Why are we trying to ban this?" But let's take a look at this article. This is from CBSNews.com. It says Harford County Schools' decision to ban book has parents, teachers voicing concerns. This was published on July 22nd, 2025. And the book in question is this book called Flamer by Mike Curato. So the article says some Harford County parents and teachers spoke out on Monday against the school board's decision to ban an award winning illustrated novel from its libraries. The book Flamer by Mike Curato was previously approved by district committees. However, parents said the school board voted to ban the book during a closed door session in late June after public appeals. This is the first book to be removed by the district after it created a process to review books flagged by concerned parents. The controversial novel is about a teenage boy who, as he navigates friendships, deals with bullies, and spends time with Elias, a boy he can't stop thinking about, he finds himself on a path of self discovery and acceptance, according to the author. You can see the book here, somewhat a picture of the front cover. It says Flamer, and it's got this boy here. I don't know what the this signal he's raising here is supposed to mean, but based on what I just read about that, you could probably guess where we are going with this. Um, you may have heard of people saying that someone is a flamer. They're talking about someone who is homosexual. And it says that the book talks about this boy and another boy that he can't stop thinking about. So that's where we're going. And, this could be just based on the description here, it sounds like an innocent book. Sounds like, he's again, if I read it like, he's navigating his friendships, he's dealing with bullies, and last here in this series spends time with Elias, and then oh yeah, a boy he can't stop thinking about. It's just kind of thrown in there secondhand, like that's not too big of a deal, and maybe it's not. I have personally not read the book, but ultimately that is what parents are upset about is the subject matter. However, that's not what's being claimed by the school board. The school board is actually going on to say that no, it's not just because of the subject matter. This is actually a vulgar book. We'll decide whether that's true or not. But it says here some parents at Monday's school board meeting feel the banned book Flamer is not appropriate for children. It's sexually explicit and it has tons of vulgar language in it, said Susie Scott from the group Moms for Liberty. Great name there, by the way, Moms for Liberty. It's just not the kind of thing that is appropriate for your average middle school or high school student. There's only so much shelf space in a school library, and we want to curate the best school library possible. Other parents agreed. And then, you know, there are some groups who protest the book ban, saying that it threatens students' rights. And this goes on to say the school board president says, no, the book is filled with pervasively vulgar language. The language is not suitable for younger children in schools. And if I'm not mistaken here, this book was allowed in middle schools. So let me make a fact check that here. I believe that uh, it was in some school libraries where middle school children had access to that. Um, but either way, that's neither here nor there. All right, neither here nor there. Because we're going to take a look at some of the things that are in this book, Flamer, and just actually see how vulgar is it. So I actually decided to go ahead and pull up a review of this book. Uh, it's from a blog. This guy says, or this girl says, "I'm with the band Flamer," and here's the full cover art. Semi-autobiographical graphic novel by Mike Curato, and here is a page 125 in the book. And let me zoom in here just a little bit for those who are watching this, so you can actually see what is being described here on this page. So here's what it says. I know I'm not gay. Gay boys like other boys. I hate boys. They're mean and scary, and they're always destroying something or saying something dumb or both. We learned at school how bad homosexuality is. It's a sin. Gay people do bad things. And I'm not a bad person. I try to do good all the time, so I couldn't be gay. Now that's interesting because honestly, I have never seen in a school library a book that is so overtly about your who you're attracted to, your sexual preference, and all that. I've never seen a book that is so overtly just describing and explaining and talking about these things in this manner, which is real interesting. And despite all the claims about there being vulgarity and the book touching on topics that are inappropriate for children, this is probably, in my opinion, one of the reasons why a lot of parents are not okay with this kind of thing. They don't want, because I'm guessing here, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm guessing that this book is, about this boy's struggle with his attraction to someone else and how it's perceived, and ultimately in the end, he probably learns a message, learns a lesson of acceptance, and finally accepts who he is as a person, or something like that. I don't know, but just kind of like uh, affirming his identity as a homosexual individual, a flamer, if you will. And parents are probably upset about that. But here are some of the other things. So this article, or this review rather, does talk about some of the other issues in this book. It says, while not pornography, Flamer is still told from the POV of a teenage boy surrounded by other teenage boys. A lot of the dialogue between characters is centered around their bodies and colored by violence and toxic masculinity. Jokes about genitalia, objectifying girls, and sexual rites of passage. I was shocked to read this kind of content because I didn't experience it growing up as a girl. However, after talking to some guy friends, they all just shrugged and said Flamer was accurate. The language, the attitude, the behavior, everything. If younger readers are already exposed to this type of content, it might be eye-opening to see how that behavior impacts other people, encouraging empathy and preventing a hostile environment for LGBTQ plus people. Okay, jokes of objectifying. I know where this is going. I know where this is going. And let me give you just, I don't know if you would call this an analogy, but when I first read this, it reminds me of something that I was exposed to when I was, I believe, in middle school slash high school. So when I was in middle school, I believe, one of my friends had a birthday party, and there was a college student there who, it was the coolest thing ever. He had a laptop with several rated R DVDs, and one of them happened to be American Pie. American Pie is a series that started out with some high schoolers who had a goal to Well, I won't even get into that, but they had some goals that revolved around some mischievous and maybe some lewd acts and things like that that they were trying to accomplish. And this was this is a movie that could not be made today. It spawned several sequels. So there was American Pie 2, American Wedding, American Reunion. I think they're even talking about making an additional movie. But the jokes, the content of the original American Pie, which many would see as a classic movie, they are very accurate for what I experienced in high school. They're very accurate for what the way that boys talk in high school and things like that. And to justify this book by saying that it uses language in the same way that teenage boys talk, so it should be okay for school libraries, in my opinion, is equal to justifying American Pie or even a novelization of that movie to be used in schools. I don't think that that's appropriate. Honestly, I don't think that that is appropriate for school children. We have to look at the educational value. Um, sure, this book may teach a story of acceptance and dealing with struggles. It's a very personal struggle to a specific individual. But I also think that there are other ways you can teach acceptance in schools that do not necessarily have to be so overt in the way that they are expressed. Having this, if you're a parent and this is a book that you want to have for your child, I have no issue with that. You parent the way that you want to. But to put this in an academic, in an institution, a school library, and to leave it to students, leave it to the students to find this book and um, pull that value out of that book on their own without any guidance, without anyone helping them navigate those topics is really not a good idea. And this is not the type of book that you should use in a curriculum. There's much better literature out there. And if you're going to ban books like Of Mice and Men, some of these other classic literature books that have been banned is Fahrenheit 451. If you're going to ban books like that in schools and allow this flamer in a library, I can't see I can't stand for it. I think it's ridiculous. I mean, these days anything can pass as literature. It seems like it's crazy. I mean, if you look at the books, for example, like 50 Shades of Grey, and no shame to anyone who likes those books, or like the new Fourth Wing, the series, the just a lot of the fantasy stuff that's coming out now, a lot of it is basically that's called smut, but it's essentially, you know, dirty dirty stories for women is ultimately what it is. It's become a thing, and it's very popular right now. And I think that you see that seeping into other areas of writing and literature, and you just see a lot more of this kind of thing in writing, and to eh, it anything can have educational value. You can make an argument that anything can have educational value. But I think that schools need to be held to a higher standard, and they should have books and content and teaching that is a little more lofty than than something like this. A little more lofty. And this is coming from someone who is a big fan of graphic novel Genderqueer. I read that a few years ago, and that's a book that has been banned to no end in different countries, I believe, and uh, in places in the U.S. And it's a book about someone who is transgender or genderqueer, as the title implies, and I thought it was educational for me, and I enjoyed reading it because I learned about someone else's perspective. But would I recommend it to a high school student or to, you know, no, I would not. I would not do that, and I don't. I wouldn't place that in a library anywhere. So now those are. I know that I gave a lot of thoughts on this. Ultimately, this book here, Flamer, I think that it is rightly banned from schools, and not just because it touches on homosexuality, but because of how it is written. This is awful. Like this is, in my opinion, this is like, um, you know, I I know 10-year-olds, 9, 10-year-olds that can read this, no issue, and they're in fourth grade. Fourth graders can read this. This is at a fourth grade or third grade level. So to give this to a middle school student, I don't find it at all challenging to a middle school student who is on reading level. This is way below their level. And if you throw in some of this lewd content that is discussed here, objectification and rights of no, no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Just because children are exposed to too much of that stuff already on TikTok and on the internet. It doesn't mean that we should, just because they see these things already, that we should continue to expose them to it in school libraries. I think that that's a ridiculous idea. That's not what the education system should be focusing on. But anyways, like I said from the beginning, I would love to hear your thoughts. Those are all my thoughts on this. Well, what do you think? This book, Flamer, have you read it? Would you allow your middle schooler or high school student to read this? And do you think that this library or this school district is just in their decision to ban this book from school libraries? Let me know down in the comment section. Also, if you are not subscribed to the channel yet, hey, you might want to consider doing that, because then you will never miss out on all the great content that I have for you on this channel. And don't forget, like, and share this video if you will. I would appreciate that. That helps me out here on YouTube. Thank you for watching. That's all I got for you in this one. See you next time.